Welcome everyone to St. Francis Center's very own State of the Streets event. We are so grateful that you have taken time out of your evening to join us. And we are excited about learning more together about people experiencing homelessness in the city of Denver and ways that you, our broader community, can be engaged in with our unhoused community. I would love to introduce our partnering local business, Studio Colfax. Sarah Tischler is a local business owner of Studio Colfax and is also a good friend of mine. I'm even rocking some lovely earrings from her business. Welcome, Sarah. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. So excited for all of this. I'll just introduce myself. My name's Sarah Tischler and I run Studio Colfax. We're an artisan boutique off East Colfax, and we carry mostly local artists and makers, from cards and candles to ceramics, jewelry. We have a big variety, and we're also very blessed to have a wonderful courtyard in the back of the shop, which we also have used in the past for markets and other community events. So helping the unhoused neighbors is definitely a big topic amongst our network. So when you asked to collaborate, we definitely knew that it'd be a big turnout, and it was something that we wanted to be a part of. I also want to thank my friend Annie Clance for helping with this event, and also our past events that we've had this year. I would not have been able to do it without her. And we'll definitely be collaborating more in the future. And if you wanted to find out about any of the events that the shop has, you can sign up to our newsletter at our website, studiocolfax.com. We also will be accepting donations too through the end of March. So if you want to stop in and see the space, we're having a sale this weekend as well. So you can come check it out. If the weather's nice, we'll open up the courtyard, and I would love to show people our artists and meet everyone in real life and say hello. Thank you so much for including us, and we're really excited to learn more and share this with our community because it is very much needed. So thank you, Kelda.
Thank you, Sarah. We're so grateful that you're our community partner, and I'm also grateful you're my friend.
Thank you.
So my name is Kelda Paula-McTenay, and I'm an outreach worker at St. Francis Center. I've been a part of our organization for about 3 years, and I have worked in the city of Denver for about 20 years with a variety of populations that are experiencing homelessness, including both families, youth and young adults, and now kind of an older population as well. And tonight, before we start off some of our programming, we wanted to start with a poll. And our first polling question that we are setting up will give each person 30 seconds to fill out the 2 poll questions. Is where do you live? So if you could take a few seconds to go ahead and fill that out, that would be great. Fill in the county, or if you're out of state, just click other. Yes. Yep, and just a few more seconds. The countdown will be changing to our second question shortly. Wow, it looks like 35% of people that are currently on are from Central Denver. And then we've got a few representing West Denver, South Denver, a good chunk representing East Denver, a couple of people from Adams County, a few from Arapahoe County, Douglas County, and a decent amount from Jefferson County, and a few from others. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for showing us that. And then we're going to go ahead and pop up our second poll question. What do you think is the main cause of homelessness in Metro Denver? Please go ahead as well to fill that one out. And again, we'll have about 30 seconds or less to quickly pick that answer. And again, if you're just now joining, we're so grateful that you're here. We've already done a brief introduction and we're filling out the second polling question. Awesome. Wow. So it looks like predominantly 55% of people answer the question that the cost of housing is a main contributing factor to people experiencing homelessness in Denver. And the next closest one would be behavioral health challenges. These results are really great. And honestly, we'll be touching on a lot of these topics throughout the rest of tonight's conversation. I wanted to go ahead and segue into our St. Francis Center video tonight. We are starting off with just a 5-minute video that encapsulates St. Francis Center itself. We have 38 years of being around in the Denver metro community, serving people experiencing homelessness with a variety of services, from street outreach to a day center, to providing permanent supportive housing. And we also provide employment services. And we're gonna go ahead and dig a little bit deeper into that with this video.
In Denver's early days, the city served as a remote western hub for people joining the gold rush. By 1983, nearly 100 years later, Denver had a population of 1.4 million. From its young Wild West days, the city had become a place of opportunity, of adventure, where people looked to make their way, make a living, and make a home. Sadly, in the 80s, Denver began to see more of its community members on the streets, living in poverty and experiencing homelessness. The Denver Post reported the 80s as the second worst economic period in Colorado's history after the Great Depression. During this downturn, many residents were left without jobs, without homes, and without hope. Reverend Bert Womack, a leader in the Episcopal Diocese of Colorado, recognized the critical needs of a growing population of people living in poverty and homeless. In 1983, Bert joined with the Episcopal Church to establish the Pastoral Care Center, a small day shelter that offered men and women experiencing homelessness a safe place to spend the day. The center served between 50 to 60 people a day in its first year, but as the number of men and women needing a safe daytime refuge increased, the Pastoral Care Center, now named St. Francis Center, SFC, began looking for a larger space. In 1985, SFC bought and renovated the building on 2323 Curtis Street, moving the day shelter operations to the Curtis Park neighborhood. 3 years later, the center entered into partnership with Trinity United Methodist Church to provide basic employment services to guests seeking stable, long-term employment. By the end of the 90s, SFC added a health clinic, and its second and current executive director, Tom Lewers, had been at the helm for 7 years. Since the move to Curtis Street, SFC has continued to adapt and meet the needs of Denver's growing homeless population, becoming a multi-service provider of shelter, outreach, employment, and housing. As visible homelessness increased in the 2000s, street outreach was started in 2005. The outreach team is made up of mobile staff who build relationships and connections with Denver's unsheltered men and women needing support and services. At the same time, it was also becoming clear that case-managed housing was the long-term solution to homelessness. By 2008, SFC completed construction on its first housing project, the Cornerstone Residences at St. Francis Center, providing 50 previously homeless men and women with their own apartments and regular case management support and other supportive services. In 2018, SFC opened its second apartment building, the St. Francis Apartments at Cathedral Square. This building provides housing and support services to 50 men and women previously homeless, some having their own homes for the first time in many years. Presently, renovations are ongoing on the historic Warren Methodist Church, located on the corner of 14th and Gilpin. A beautifully remodeled space will open in 2021, marking SFC's third housing facility with 48 workforce units, providing residents a stable, affordable home while they work and get back on their feet. Today, the SFC Day Center welcomes an average of 800 people daily, 7 days a week, year-round. The Day Center offers guests access to mail and storage, showers, clothes, social services, and medical care. We have come a long way since 1983, both as a city and as an organization serving some of our city's most vulnerable. The population of Denver has doubled since our founding, with the city consistently ranked as one of the fastest growing cities in the country. Metro Denver's most recent point-in-time survey shows that Denver has approximately 5,755 people experiencing homelessness on any given night. As these numbers have risen, the St. Francis Center has developed a holistic approach to coming alongside our guests, offering opportunities to rebuild what has been lost. For as long as necessary, we will continue to meet the needs of our community members who are experiencing homelessness, providing core services and the types of additional support that truly direct our guests away from homelessness. And we will only be able to continue to do this with your help. We can do this when our city, our churches, our schools, our neighborhoods, and our businesses come together as one community.
So this video is really just the tip of the iceberg of how St. Francis Center engages our community members experiencing homelessness here in Denver. And it definitely helps paint the picture of the variety of services offered by St. Francis Center. First, I'd like to delve into tonight's agenda. We are doing this event particularly to engage our local community with ways that you can advocate, be educated, serve and donate our population experiencing homelessness, as well as to just really build more of a working collaboration with our broader community. The format tonight will be about an hour-long program. We hope to end by 7:30 Mountain Standard Time. And we will be posing a few questions to our three panelists. I'd like to let you know that this video will also be recorded and will be able to be shared with others at the end of tonight, and that we aren't taking any further questions during the event, but at the end of the event, you will see a slide with my information on it that you will be able to email me with any further questions that may come out of our conversations tonight. So I wanted to start off with the fact that we are focusing specifically on the St. Francis Center Street Outreach team, and which is my team, amazing people. And we are under the umbrella of the Denver Street Outreach Collaborative, also known as DSOC, which is comprised of three partnering organizations, SFC, Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, and Urban Peak. We work together as of about a 20-person street outreach collaborative to engage people experiencing homelessness on the streets of Denver 6 days a week. And we do so with lots of heart and a few tools in our tool belt, including helping our folks with IDs, helping engage them with some basic needs. Sometimes that may be socks or a sleeping bag, and helping connect them to supportive services such as mental health support, substance use supports, harm reduction services, as well as with the ultimate goal of also getting our folks into some long-term housing. Plus, there are a variety of other services that I just didn't even list because it is kind of like tailored to each individual that we come across, the kind of services we may need to delve into for their particular situation. In addition to that, you might have noticed in the past year throughout the pandemic that we have seen more visible encampments of people experiencing homelessness throughout the city and county of Denver. Because of that, the city of Denver has started a newer street outreach team to kind of join forces with the existing DSOC or Denver Street Outreach Collaborative. And they're called the SOUL team, or Street Outreach to Large Encampments. Their goal is to primarily triage and assess individuals that they engage at the larger encampments to make referrals for more immediate needs and for medical needs, as well as to also refer them to the DSOC outreach workers who may do some more intensive case management with individuals that are requesting that, open to it, and are wanting that kind of service. With that said, I want to move forward to introduce my teammates, colleagues, and amazing people that I get to work with. I'm going to start off with our most seasoned employee on our team, and he is a wonderful human. I'm so grateful that he's my teammate, Graydon Charlesworth. He has worked at St. Francis Center for 20 plus years. He started off in core services at our day center. Since then, the last couple of years, he brought his wealth of experience and knowledge and wisdom to our team and has made an exponential impact in the lives of those we serve. So, Graydon, thank you for joining us tonight. Next, I'd like to introduce Ian Stett. He has been a colleague of mine now at 2 different workplaces. And previously, we had worked together at Urban Peak, where we serve people experiencing homelessness. And the last couple of years, we have worked together on the street outreach team here at St. Francis Center. Ian represents the DSOC outreach team, as well as he is our new SOS, or Sanctioned Outdoor Space Site Manager. And we'll be talking about that later on in the conversation. So welcome, Ian. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce our lovely Carson. Carson is the newest member of our team, and that's right, she is from a previous organization. She had worked at Colorado Coalition for the Homeless as a peer specialist there on their MAT team. And since then, she's joined forces with St. Francis Center to be on our SOUL outreach team, specifically as a peer navigator. And what I love about Carson's experience as well is that she has lived experience of being unhoused and transitioning into being housed again and working, and just, she's got a beautiful story. So welcome, Carson. All right, so panelists, let's get right into it. We're going to dive right into our first question. Why is homelessness so visible in Denver?
Hi, I'm Carson. I'm a peer navigator for the SOUL outreach team. That's strategic outreach to large encampments. I work for the St. Francis Center. And why is homelessness so visible? I think that's kind of a large question, because the culture of homelessness in the past has been to hide away and kind of find, spots near the river or where you're not seen so much. And these days, I think the homeless are sort of saying, no, I want to be seen. This is an issue. This is not just my issue. This is our issue. So I want to be seen in the public eye. And I think that's also a reason they're probably housed together so closely these days, why you see larger encampments. More people are using tents as well. It's a safe structure. it's, sleeping bags are not going to get you through the blizzard that we just went through. And I think tents are extremely important. Individuals don't really use shelters anymore, and there's a multitude of reasons why our unhoused neighbors decide not to use shelter. Many of which has to do with addiction. If you are struggling with addiction and you need a place to stay at night and you're trying to stay sober, it's not the best environment for you to be in a night shelter, because the people around you very well may be using. I know a client personally who was on probation, and they were required to stay in a night shelter because they were street homeless. And when they were required to stay there, they were also a recovering addict of meth. And they were trying not to use meth, but they were surrounded by it. But they were being required to stay at this shelter. So it just shows you the conundrum that our unhoused neighbors are put through. The public libraries and Union Station are used as de facto shelters. And when people are pushed out of night shelters or feel that they're not safe enough to use them, they tend to go to Union Station, which actually has a roof over their head. It's going to keep the snow off of them. It's going to keep the rain off of them. And it just makes sense that they would go to these public spaces, these spaces that we all pay for together. Yeah, thank you.
Can I chime in as well? Someone spoke, I think Josh from Baker asked a question about admission rates to shelters in terms of like pre-corona virus outbreak compared to post. And so I wanted to mention something about that. And I would say that our shelter system was maybe not operating at its limits back then, but we were definitely pretty full. And that has been stretched to its limits and beyond since the pandemic has started. When we opened our main men's shelter at the National Western Stock Show, it housed 700 men, and it was almost full the night of, if not full the night of it opening. So the pandemic has really not done us any favors in terms of shelter access. And like Carson said, the problem is that people are camping in more tents, which is just more visible by nature. It used to be historically that people were camping in doorways and just using sleeping bags and finding hideaways to weather storms and everything. With the pandemic, that changed substantially. And the reason why it's more visible in a lot of ways is because the places that people have historically camped, meaning the neighborhoods surrounding the Denver metro area, whether that's Cap Hill or Five Points or Park Hill or even Ballpark neighborhood, people are home more because of the pandemic, because they're working from home, or because, God forbid, they've been furloughed or laid off. And so they're seeing these people who have traditionally been camping in these areas more because they're home more. When people are commuting, they have a tendency of not seeing it because they're seeing it on the street corner, but they're not seeing it in their neighborhood, because those people a lot of times will set up shop when it gets dark and then they'll move in the morning. And the pandemic shut everything down. People just kind of hunkered down. And so it's became a lot more visible. On top of that, the growing gentrification and development of the Denver metro area has really increased the cost of living, which has increased the amount of homelessness, because the cost of living has way outpaced the minimum wage, but also just the housing market has just increased. And so that's really played a role into that as well.
Thank you very much, Ian and Carson, for those insightful answers. We'll go ahead and move on to our second question. In what ways are you seeing the impacts of systems such as racism, macroeconomic forces, criminal justice, and public policy?
Well, I guess that's my question. Good evening, everyone. My name is Graydon, and my background is in finance. geographic information systems, and fine arts. So I guess I would say I understand or try to understand economics. I study it. So maybe perhaps I can try to understand what's going on, not just in the world at large, but with homelessness specifically. And there's a lot of issues involved there. And clearly I'm not going to understand everything. But where would I start this conversation in regards to homelessness and economics? And I would say housing. The cost of housing is, what Ian touched on. The cost of housing is immense. I could give you data, I could give you specifics, but it takes $26.50 an hour to be considered housed in Colorado. And then it takes 30 bucks an hour to make a go at it for housing in Denver. And that would be about 33% of your income, maybe 40%. That's how they figure it. So it's a huge cost of living. There's also, I think we all kind of realize that there's a bubble, in our economy that's forcing some issues, exacerbating a problem. There's issues with the minimum wage. And the way I look at the minimum wage is kind of like the way I look at the Yeti. I wish it existed, but I've never seen any real world evidence that it actually exists. But it takes quite a lot of money to be an adult and live in Denver, Colorado. It takes quite a bit of money to be an adult and live in this country. And I could add medical costs, but I would take up too much time. But medical costs are a significant issue. I run into that constantly. It's not drug addiction, it's not mental health. All that stuff is important, but I do run across a lot of people who struggle with medical poverty, if I can phrase it that way. And so that makes it difficult. It really does makes a challenge for everyone. And I think we can all look at the newspapers or whatever we read and realize that there are some imbalanced things in our economy, and that makes it a challenge for not only us, but for people who are enduring homelessness. And so there are other features that tie into this situation of homelessness and poverty. And I would say one thing I would like to touch on is racism. Racism impacts, it has an impact on homelessness. I see this after 21 years. I've gotten to know a lot of people, and I've seen a very diverse community, and been very blessed to be part of this community. It's made me a better person. But there's issues, economic issues like redlining, where people were segregated into neighborhoods. And then there's a gentrification, which is a different kind of wave going into those previous redlined communities. And that pushes out folks who are living in those previous communities. That puts a lot of pressure on the community. And I would also add, not that I'm an expert, I'm going to kind of clear my throat. Thank you for that. But people of color have a disproportionate representation in the homeless community. It really is true. And so that you add some other features like criminal justice, the criminal justice system, I can tell you, it's tragic. It just creates a cycle. The criminal justice system creates a cycle where a person who is enduring homelessness is struggling through their everyday life. The criminal justice system brings them into the cycle. And it's so hard to get out of that. It's hard to get out of the cycle of poverty. And so that is an issue. It's a real issue. And I've known so many dear people over the years who struggle with that cycle of criminal justice. And I say criminal justice in parentheses. I don't know if I really have a word for it at this time. But then there's racial trauma. And the way I look at it is people endure homelessness. And then people also endure classism. And then people also endure racism. So if you've got all three, if you got homelessness, classism, and racism, that's a burden. That can be quite a burden. And I've seen that over the years too. It can be quite a burden. And so, sorry about that. It wouldn't be one of these Zoom calls without a cat. I'm not a person of color, but I feel like I need to empathize with their trauma. I feel like that is an important feature for me, is to realize I'm not a person of color. I don't understand the trauma, but it's critically important for me to empathize and to find ways to really connect and help folks connect. That's part of what outreach people do, is make connections. We try to help people connect. There are some newer public policies that the city of Denver is endeavoring to work on. And the 24-hour shelter is one example. A 24-hour shelter gives people a place to go 24 hours. It gives them kind of a stable place, which is critically important in a chaotic world. And then in relation to the day shelter and the hospitality shelters like St. Francis Center, the 24-hour shelter takes some pressure off of us. The St. Francis Center has a little less pressure to accommodate the massive need. So the community members are less stressed, and we're able to target our services more efficiently when there's not the massive crush of humanity. And then also, I would say that Denver, I can't give it a rating or grade, but I think the Denver police are endeavoring to incorporate more trauma-informed care, which means that, in a way, using the police the way they're meant to, not as a dog catcher or the in-street mental health professional. Police have their role, and it's an important role. We all agree with that. So there's programs that are coming online, like the STAR program, and what that does is bring a police officer to a situation. It brings a mental health person to a situation together, and they work in concert to help solve a problem. It's a much better problem solving mechanism than what we've experienced in the past. And so I think targeting police skill sets and targeting community service provider skill sets is a critical upgrade, and it's a work in progress. And I do see results. I have seen great results. I could give you some great stories, and I don't want to get emotional, but I could give you some great stories, and maybe I will if I have time. I think it's important for outreach to acknowledge our empathy for business owners. This is the worst time for local businesses. And so we realize, yes, homelessness is impacting their businesses at the worst time. So we do have empathy for businesses, local businesses in particular. And we want to engage and connect and problem solve. And it's a can-do spirit. It's just like a local business person has that can-do spirit. So we totally empathize with local businesses. And so there are steps out of homelessness. You can't just take one giant leap. It's not a giant leap for mankind, it's a giant leap for a human. But we don't want to take too big a step. So there's a certain number of steps that we can take. Tiny homes is a great example, and Ian will probably expand on that. Tiny homes are a great option. And I've worked with some people who got into tiny homes, and it's directed their life in a way where the housing pressure is taken off, and they can focus on jobs. They can focus on mental health, emotional health, family health, because they can visit with families, hygiene health, chaotic health. There's less chaos. And I think that's very important. I would look at St. Francis's project at Warren United Methodist Church. That is a good idea. It's a very good idea, and it gives plenty of hope, or at least some hope, in this community as well. And then also SOS is a organized, controlled environment that takes a lot of the chaos out of the urban camping issue. I see that my time is up, so I do have some great stories. I'd love to tell you about them, but I think I will defer, not being a time hog here. So I'll leave that back to you, Kelda.
But that was such good information, and really from depths of experience and your heart. And so I'm really thankful for that, Graydon. Thank you for sharing. This next question will let all of us share an experience or two. What is one of the most challenging experiences of being an outreach worker, and why do you do the work you do? Again, what is one of the most challenging experiences of being an outreach worker, and why do you do the work you do?
Hi, I'm Carson again. So for me, the hardest part of this job is the vicarious trauma that you get from working with the homeless that experience their own, horrific traumas. There are thousands and thousands of situations that lead somebody into homelessness. I mean, you can have a broken leg, and before you know it, you don't have health insurance. And so you lose your job, and before you know it, you lose your housing. And it can be that easy. And typically, people tend to associate drug use with homelessness. And I think it's usually the other way around. Homelessness comes, and then the apathy comes, and then the hopelessness comes, and then therefore the drug use can come, and the alcohol use can come, and that becomes a coping mechanism, and a cheap one at that. And when you're on the streets, that matters. So for me, I got into this because I want to give back the way that was given to me. I did experience homelessness in Florida, and I was helped by peer navigators. I was helped by outreach workers, and I was connected to housing. And thank God I was, because here I am able to give back. And I just want to recognize that my privilege brought me here as well. I was served opportunities because of the color of my skin that, people of color would not have gotten. I can distinctly remember appealing to a couple people about in a detox center, trying to get them to let me stay. And had they let me go that night, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you. And had I been a person of color, would they have turned me away? Those are questions that we need to ask. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for sharing, Carson.
I can go. Hi, I'm Ian. I didn't introduce myself the last time I spoke, but the most challenging thing that I experience on top of the vicarious trauma that we experience daily with our community members is the constant barriers that we ourselves run into when working with a community member to get them into housing. And when I say community member, I mean one of the guests at the day center, or one of the individuals that you see sleeping outside. And so it's so tough for me, at least, to continue to run into those barriers, to continue to try to fight the bureaucracy that makes it so difficult for people to do the simplest things. And I think that as individuals who may have never experienced homelessness, or haven't had the misfortune of being outside for any extended period of time, I think we often neglect how difficult it is. And those barriers can vary widely depending on the individual. And they can be as simple as getting a Colorado state ID. It can be as simple as getting your birth certificate. It can be as simple as getting a social security card, or as simple as trying to find a place to have your stuff while you go for a job interview, or finding clothes that are clean and look nice looking to do at your job interview. And I think that those are the considerations that I like to bring to the community and say, have you ever considered these things when you're interacting with individuals outside? Because it's not an easy life, and they constantly have to fight with, where am I going to sleep tonight? Is it going to be safe? Is my stuff going to be safe? And they can cope with those things in both inappropriate ways and appropriate ways. And we could get into the weeds on that, but that's the thing that's challenging for me. And I would lift up that, the reason why I do the work I do is because of the victories that we do get. I have a community member that I've been working with for well over a year, who had never had an ID, period. They were 30 years old before they got their ID. And I was one of the people who was able to help them walk through that process to get all their documents, to get an ID, and to see them get that ID and walk out of the DMV with that temporary copy was one of the best moments of my career, purely for the fact that, like, that's why we do it. The love of the job is why we do it. It's not the financial benefit that we get, although that helps sustain us. I fought with that community member to get them housing for maybe 6 months or over 6 months to get them into housing. And I would say that housing was our housing at St. Francis Center. So the barriers are not just within the government, the barriers are within the system that we've set up. And the joys are also in conquering those things and having those successes with our community members and watching them take those things and run with it. And this community member that I talk about, they now want to come and they want to be a peer navigator like Carson, and they want to do the things that help them get off the streets and change their life, and take those tools and the experiences they learn and turn that around. And to me, that's why I do this job. That's why I wake up in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Really powerful how simple things can be huge successes for our folks, isn't it? Yeah. Graydon, would you like to share?
We could go by age. I'm the oldest by far. Do you want to go next?
Gosh. Okay, I'll go next. I'll give you a couple minutes. So again, the question was, what is one of the most challenging experiences of being an outreach worker, and why do we do what we do? I would say, for me specifically in this past year, since last May of 2020, one of the biggest challenges for me has been the loss of 10 direct unhoused community members that I had been walking a journey with, providing them with services and getting to know them, had built rapport with. Several were very close to housing. Each of these community members passed away for a variety of reasons. I just wanted to touch on the most recent one, actually just happened about a month ago. And it was a gentleman that I had only had about 10 engagements with, but we had had several significant conversations. And later I had found out that he had passed away in our most recent -6-degree cold weather night. And it broke my heart because I know that he and I had had conversations about shelter options. We also had conversations about making a referral for him for a sanctioned outdoor space or SOS site. And he just really wasn't interested. And those kind of moments are very sobering in the work that we do. And quite frankly, they happen far too often than they need to. On a more positive note, I will say I do the work I do because of a deep, heartfelt calling I have to serve really any kind of marginalized population. But currently I'm serving people experiencing homelessness in Denver. And I would say out of that, I have a particular draw towards families when I see um, minors, particularly on the streets with a parent or both their parents. It just rather breaks my heart. I have one particular story of when I had initially started St. Francis Center about 3.5 years ago, of a family that I had met. The single mother of this family, she had recently been displaced from her housing because it was a condemned building. And so she was outside and she had to find temporary housing for her couple of children with 2 different family members, while she was navigating the journey to get back off the streets and into stabilized housing. She and I had done some applications, and we also had filled out something called a vulnerability index survey, or known as the VI-SPDAT survey. And as a result of doing some of those things, within, I think, about 8 months or so to a year, she was into permanent supportive housing. So that they're really, what I find joy in is seeing our community members experience joy as they're walking through the hardship. That's where they can find, or that's where we all can find real joy, is through the hard times. And just seeing the single mom maintain her dignity through the whole process, but just feeling the sense of joy to have her children under her same roof again was a really beautiful reunion for me to just be a part of that. It was really like a privilege and an honor to be a part of walking that with her. Braden, your turn.
Do I have permission to be emotional? No?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
So I would say that I'm probably the biggest challenge to my job. I got to overcome myself. There's a lot of things I'm working on, and it's too much work. And that's a serious statement. I have to overcome myself. A lot of the times when I'm doing this work, I have to overcome myself. And I also would say that there's challenges, emotional challenges, like we talk about the vicarious trauma and the direct trauma. There's direct trauma too, and that weighs heavily. You know, I love you guys. I love my teammates. I love St. Francis Center. I've been doing it 21 years. I love you guys. And that's one reason why I do this. And I can give you another little anecdote here about what happened this year. We had that kind of a warmish, dry spell in January, and I was making my rounds as an outreach person, and I would go into Union Station and I'd meet up with people as I would do. And I found a lady there consistently. She's in her early 70s. She had medical issues. And I'd bring her hats and gloves and long underwear, and she'd be so gracious. I touch in with other people. I think I touch in on average about 25 people a time when I go to Union Station. But here's this dear lady, and I'm trying to figure out a solution for her because she's sleeping up top at night at Union Station. And she's a bit of a handful sometimes emotionally, but who isn't? But I got to know her, and I kind of built rapport day after day, checking in, and then frustrated with myself because I don't always have a solution. And I was looking for a solution as networking and team building. And in February, we had that big cold front coming, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? So I reached out in desperation and got the help from Elizabeth, another superstar coworker, and I got the help of Nurse Audrey, who's a superstar, and we came together as a team, and we're able to get her into Protective Action Motel, which is very civilized, warm, safe, food, all the above, TV. And she had 100 pounds worth of gear, 100 pounds. And she probably weighs 110. But through a team effort, we were able to get her into protective action, and the city give props to the city of Denver for that, and also to a number of other people and organizations. But she called me a week later. She had my business card, and she called me a week later, and she said that she was planning on taking her life that night because the Arctic cold front was coming in, and she was up top at Union Station, and it's not always that safe there. And she was just at the end. And she said, I was the only person who saw her. And what can I say?
So powerful. So powerful. It sounds like that's why you do the work you do.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, Graydon and Ian and Carson, for sharing on some of those more heartfelt stories that we've engaged in. So this brings us to our call to action. Where do we go from here? And actually, I'm just kidding. We have one more question. I forgot. So sorry. Why is collaboration important to make impactful change?
Hi,
Panelists.
Carson again. I'm with the Soul Outreach team, like I said, which is strategic outreach to large encampments. And collaboration is particularly important to our team because we're a city-made team, and we're made up of Urban Peak outreach worker for youth, Stout Street Health Center outreach street nurse that actually does healthcare on site with us in encampments, outreach worker from Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, who has over 10 years experience housing unhoused folks, and myself, a peer navigator from St. Francis Center. So we're a team made up of 5 people, and we all come with different experience, and we all come with different backgrounds, but even just the companies that we work for, the nonprofits we work for, are all different and offer different services. And we can streamline with each other right next to one another what we need to do next. It's pretty amazing. Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, Urban Peak. I would just say that, you know, partnering with other organizations is vital to what we do.
Thank you, Carson. Any other thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I would take the opportunity to make some plugs about our safe outdoor space.
Whoop, whoop.
Like Carson said, collaboration is vital to what we do. DSOC, or the Denver Street Outreach Collaborative, is exactly that, and we have been successful in housing. Oh, I had the information here. As a collaborative, over 350 people last year alone. Our St. Francis Center team collaboratively housed 128 of those. And that's only possible with that collaboration. And one of the things I was writing in the chat just now is that we need to come up with dynamic solutions. And so one of the dynamic solutions that we have come up with and have been asking for over 20 years as an agency is a safe outdoor space. Because the idea of urban camping and the banning of said urban camping has had a great impact on the community at whole. And we see that the safe outdoor space is one of many different, unique, innovative ways that we can commonly refer to as illegal camping or urban camping, and give access to people who don't traditionally access shelter resources, those resources that they need to survive, and access to providers and resources so they can thrive, and move towards something more stable, more secure, and would be our hope is something more in line with permanent housing. Although in the person-centered language that we use, that's up to the person to decide. And so one of the things that I would say is that tiny homes is another one of those things. And an individual named Emily from the Baker neighborhood asked the question about why don't we, or why can't we consider establishing more tiny homes communities? And that is a great question. And I would pose that back to you guys. And the reality is, this is a community issue. And that if you are interested in helping establish more tiny homes, that you contact Cole Chandler with the Colorado Village Collaborative. The Colorado Village Collaborative is awesome. They've been helping us set up our safe outdoor space. They already have another safe outdoor space that they're running currently and are doing an amazing job. Quika is the one running it, and she is fantastic. And I would say that this is very different from the camping that you see out front of your building or out front of your house or in your alley or what have you. It is a safe place. There's security, there's staff on site, there's bathrooms and hand washing stations and a shower truck and meals that come in and services like outreach workers who come and meet with community members and nurses who come in. And so it has all the things that people need to build their life back up at one site in a place. And we have seen successes with that. And I would love to highlight those successes with you guys. And I would love to show those more with our St. Francis Center site. Unfortunately, the location that we were working really diligently to have has not worked out to date. And so I would also post to you guys, if you guys are interested in supporting our safe outdoor space, you contact Cole Chandler again, because he's helping navigate that, or our executive director, Tom Lures, or I would even say if you need to reach out, you can try to reach out to me and I can direct you to the right people. The reality is we can't, if we don't have a location, we can't set up the safe outdoor space. And I do believe that it can help alleviate the camping that has become so problematic, whether it's the large encampments or other just smaller camping situations.
Thank you so much, Carson and Ian. Thank you for that good insight on those matters of how we can work towards solutions for our folks. So obviously that does actually bring us to our call to action, as Ian already segued. And we had another specific question from Carol from Park Hill, requesting suggestions for how to effectively familiarize people with the unhoused, their trauma and barriers. Well, Carol, this is a great way right in front of you, is through advocacy and education. Reaching out to your local council member to advocate on behalf of people experiencing homelessness, educating yourself by, one example is you could go to the SFC website for more information. But specifically, if you look at the slide in front of you, everyone, this shares Amanda Pennington's information, and you can reach out to her for ways to really become more of an advocate for our people experiencing homelessness in a variety of ways. So we strongly encourage you to do that, whether it's for accessible shelter, service options, long-term housing, temporary sheltering options such as SOS sites, tiny homes, you name it. We would love to help have more conversations with you on that. Please reach out to Amanda. Next, we have volunteering as an option to engage the community, and you can reach out to Ellie Benjamin, who is our volunteer coordinator here at St. Francis Center, on various ways to get involved with volunteering at our upcoming SOS site or to volunteer at our St. Francis Center Day Center. Finally, we'd love you to donate. So we're continuing to take items at Studio Colfax is continuing to take items for the SOS welcome kits, and you can drop those off at Studio Colfax's store Tuesday through Saturday, I believe, noon to 5. Definitely do that. Also, if you have further donations beyond the end of March, please feel free to reach out to Ellie again for further donations that you may have. And so in closing, where do we go from here? Finally, the last steps for questions, please feel free to email me, Kelda, Kelda at sfcdenver.org. And again, we want to thank our panelists, thank our partnership with Studio Colfax, and thank you, our community members that care about getting involved and being a part of the bigger problem solving and conversation around our unhoused neighbors. Thank you for your time. We wish you all a good night. Good night. Ciao.
Thank you, guys.
Big thank you.